Out of all the great and not so great hashtag challenges that have come out throughout this quarantine, my absolute favorite one so far has been the Sailor Moon redraw, the hashtag Sailor Moon redraw. It's been really great and comforting from, my perspective as a 90s kid who grew up watching Sailor Moon and just watching these artists put their own unique spin on like a fan favorite of mine. And since I'm a really big fan of really, really weird cold opens, I figured we'd spend a couple of seconds looking at a couple of my favorite ones before we get started with today's show. So, here they are. All right, we're done with that now, so I guess it's time to pivot into politics. Hey, I welcome you all to the first episode of Pivot into Politics. In this program, we dive into pressing issues in local, state, national, and even international governments. Because quite honestly, someone has to. I am your host and resident congressional race failure man, Rashad Lloyd, and I'll be doing some word vomit about the American political system. So girdle your loins, motherfuckers, and I will gladly take you on this magic carpet ride through the show of a government we rely on to survive. Today, we will be discussing a few of the many flaws of the two-party system in America and possible solutions. Yes, there are a few things we can do to fix the system. There are processes we can implement that will move us away from a two-party system and offer us a chance to have a shot at a real democracy. Now, I purposefully say a shot at a real democracy and not a return to democracy because we've never had a real democracy. To begin with, our options have always only been either left or right. We've never had an opportunity to truly unify and move forward. A two-party system is a kind of system in which only two parties dominate the political atmosphere in a particular country. In America, we have the Republicans and the Democrats, or as I like to call them, Republican Light. 100% full-bodied support for corporate welfare, 75% more respect for women's autonomy, and 50% less racism. Now, before you start, I understand that not all Republicans show racist tendencies, but it doesn't help the image of the party overall when you have party leaders like, say, the President of the United States of America, Donald John Trump, disparaging entire ethnic groups by calling them rapists and murderers. Now, if we flip that coin, we also have leaders on the Democratic side like one good old Uncle Joe R. Biden, the eternal wannabe POTUS. Yes, eternal. It's his third shot at trying to get to the White House. Now, Uncle Joe was the hip VP during the Obama administration, but he was also the architect of the 1994 crime bill, which disproportionately affected communities of color. And before you say, hey man, that was a long time ago, Uncle Joe's changed. He's hip. Just listen to what Uncle Joe had to say when he was pressed on his plans on what he wants to do as president for the black community while having a conversation with Charlemagne the God on the breakfast show. Let's go ahead and roll that clip.
I'm in trouble.
Listen, you got to come see us when you come to New York, VP Biden.
I will.
It's a long way until November. We got more questions.
You got more questions, but I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
It don't have nothing to do with Trump. It has to do with the fact I want something for my community. I would.
That was rough. Whew. See, I want you to think of our two parties like Two-Face, one of the Batman's rogues. While on one side he's a grotesque, hideous, big-eyed goon, on the other side is a handsome, charming, respectable psychopath. While both sides look different on the outside, they share the same exact body, and at their core, they're the same person. You see, when our options are so few, the larger group of party supporters tend to assume the same labels as their leaders, and that's not an accurate representation of the true will of the people as a whole. And that's one of the main issues with the two-party system. A lack of true representation for normal people, like you and me, who are just trying to do our best to, not die. Over the years, the masses have fought against the two-party system because of its divisiveness, and other reasons such as the two-party system creates fixed political views and downplays alternative views. You're either a Democrat or a Republican. Nuance is thrown completely out the window. The two-party system creates inconsistent governing. Since parties are consistently trying to maintain control, they tend to govern in such a way that allows them to maintain power instead of governing in a manner that serves their constituents. And a two-party system also creates thoughtless voting patterns. The Dems' favorite line is, "Vote blue no matter who." And the Republicans cannot stop talking about how much the Democrats want to take away your guns. Fun fact, the two-party system approach is actually a deterrent when it comes to inter-party compromise. It promotes partisanship, and in some instances, it even thrives on it because it's a giant game of red versus blue. No, not the fun one. This one. That red versus blue. Yeah, see? That's not cool, and it doesn't really help anybody. So, over the years, we've had Democrats as the majority and Republicans, so we've gotten to see both styles of leadership. And I can't speak for everyone, but there haven't been any major improvements in my life during either the Obama administration or the Trump administration. The struggles I had then, I still have now. I still can't afford a higher education. The idea of owning a home and starting a family seemed like an absolute fairy tale. We're still waging forever wars across the globe, while American infrastructure and technology become increasingly antiquated, and healthcare is still massively expensive. So, if it's not the general public who benefits from changes in administration, who are the real winners here? Maybe the past can actually help shed some light on this. During his farewell address, before dipping out to tend to his farm like Thanos at the end of Infinity War, the OG of the nation, the man who would not be king, Big Daddy POTUS #1, George Washington himself, added a grim warning about partisan politics. This is what he had to say. They serve to organize faction, to give it an artificial and extraordinary force, to put in the place of the delegated will of the nation, the will of a party, often a small but artful and enterprising minority of the community, and, according to the alternate triumphs of different parties, to make the public administration the mirror of the ill-concerted and incordious projects of faction, rather than the organ of consistent and wholesome plans digested by common councils and modified by mutual interests. Big Daddy GW also goes on to say, however combinations or associations of the above description may now and then answer popular ends, they are likely in the course of time and things to become potent engines by which cunning, ambitious, and unprincipled men will be enabled to subvert the power of the people and usurp for themselves the reins of government, destroying afterwards the very engines which have lifted them into unjust dominion. It's almost like he could see the future. You see, all of this is possible under a two-party government because the people have no choice but to vote for whatever they see as the lesser of two evils. There are no viable alternatives, and knowing this, the parties often act against the will of the people, since they know they don't have to be the best option, they just have to be slightly less horrible than their opposition. For further clarification, let's cut to special guest correspondent Geralt of Rivia and see what he has to say about the lesser of two evils. Let's go ahead and roll that clip.
The lesser evil. Evil is evil, strikable. Lesser, greater, middling. It's all the same.
So now that we've heard from the two pretty famous men with white hair, we must work on ways in which we can deviate from the two-party system and shift to a more robust party system. That is the only way we can have a responsive government that is held accountable to the will of the people, a government of the people, by the people, for the people. You know, right now, America is a divided republic. The menace that exists as foretold and is going against the system of government the founders put in place with the Constitution. In other words, up, man. Though America's two-party system has been an issue for years, the threat we face today is a very new one, different and dangerous in new and terrifying ways, because we are now truly hyper-partisan. This was a development that started with the rise of the Tea Party in the mid-2010s and came to a head during the 2016 presidential elections when then-candidate Donald John Trump went on record saying if he lost, it would be because Hillary cheated, and he would refuse to concede. Similar concerns have been raised during his 2020 election cycle, and it's a terrifying thing to consider what would happen if a president refused a peaceful transfer of power to a new administration. We've already seen that the Republican-controlled Senate has refused to hold the president accountable, and the Republican-controlled Supreme Court has heard and ruled cases in favor of the president, quite honestly, more often than not. In November 2019, the president asked the Supreme Court to rule that he has absolute immunity from criminal prosecution while he is in office, and the case has finally reached the nation's highest court, and the ruling could change American politics forever. So, that's the bad part. A lot of stuff to think about. But the question I want to ask and answer is, what can we do to fix hyperpartisanship? In order to pull us back from the political abyss, we need legislation like democracy dollars and ranked choice voting. Democracy dollars gives the power back to the people at no extra cost to the taxpayer by letting public candidates raise small contributions from regular people who normally wouldn't participate in funding campaigns because, they don't have any money. I mean, God, honestly, making money such an important part of politics was one of the greatest setups of all time. Today's candidates pay too much attention to wealthy donors and not enough to regular people. The voices of the wealthy are disproportionately louder than our voices because they don't have to worry about having money to do pesky things like eat, pay rent, maybe even go to the doctor so that you don't, Democracy dollars will help modernize a state's current public financing program so that they can ensure that participating candidates from all parts of the state can run competitive campaigns based on the strength of their local support, not the size of their campaign contributions. Then we have another thing, ranked choice voting, my personal favorite. Ranked choice voting is a system in which voters use ranked or preferential ballot to rank, that's why it's called that, choices in sequence on the ordinal scale, first, second, third. There are multiple ways in which rankings can be counted to determine which candidates or candidates are elected. And different methods may choose different winners from the same set of ballots. And then we have the most important thing that we can do. We need a multiple party system. If we are to truly step away from hyperpartisanship, we need to give people a home where their ideas and views are heard, respected, and executed. We can't keep trying to stick the square into the circle slot. It doesn't fit. There is a way that we can achieve all of this, and you can play a pivotal role in the process. After my first failure running for office, I realized there's no getting around playing the game. Which, by the way, you all just lost. Getting back on the topic, the game is set up with rules that allow the wealthy and the powerful to maintain that power. Luckily for us, they've grown accustomed to people trying to win a rigged game using their rules. If we discard their rules, it throws the system into chaos, and that, my friends, is our key to victory. So, what you can do to join the fight is run for local office. By gaining seats in your state legislature, you can begin the process of expanding voter rights and making the process of voting easier. Before we get to the big social changes that will help improve people's overall quality of life, we have to make sure that people can first be heard. Any idea to make voting easier is a good idea. Setting up polling stations at high school for high school seniors, great idea. Setting up polling places in public libraries, great idea. Lowering the voting age to 16, great idea. Turning your local DMV into a polling place on election day, that is a great idea. As we make it easier to get feedback from more and more constituents, we will have the support needed to make changes that will help improve their lives. Most politicians come up with a plan and present it to the people as a one-size-fits-all, and honestly, that's not it, Chief. We must be the people who listen before we act so that we can effectively serve as many people as possible. Run as a member of one of the established parties. It's simply easier to gain entry into the legislature by playing the game, but after you're in, switch your party affiliation. This action will instantly give a third party legitimacy and help you differentiate yourself from other legislators and help bring in more support to the issues that you champion. Always be on the lookout for allies. We must build a strong coalition to fight back. Reach out to individuals, build teams across different districts, and run as a unified team committed to see change. You don't have to just run your campaign in your district. You can run as a team. If there are 8 districts in your state, you can have one person in each district and you can all run together as one single unit. Lastly, embrace the chaos. Don't be afraid to be different. People across the country are hungry. They are starving for change. In order to inspire those around you, you first have to be the change that you want to see. So as I close out, the last thing that I want everybody to know is that from now on, it can't be about being left or right. Now is the time for us to move forward, but do it united. If you have ever believed that something about the system doesn't work for you, check out the link in the bio and join us at Forward United, a political home for the politically homeless. Okay, that was sick. I got goosebumps. We are donezo, baby. Hit the outro music.